welcome to this new episode of the Enrollment Clinic. My guest today is Samira Pardanani, who is the Associate Vice President of International Education and Global Engagement at Shoreline Community College. And Samira is one of these leaders in the industry that I've wanted to talk to for a while, just because and I'll have her talk a little bit about her experience, but she has a vast experience in, international education. Also wanted to have her talk a little bit about Shoreline Community College, because I think, it's one of those institutions that does an amazing job at attracting international students, retaining them, and then almost acting like a feeder school for universities across the U.S. So welcome, Samira.
Hi, it is wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
I talked a little bit about your vast experience, but I want to have you talk a little bit about it.
Just how I entered the field and all of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I grew up in India and studied in Germany and Austria first, and then came to the US as an international student. So it's been kind of a lot of international experiences. It's kind of part of who I am. But my first job out of grad school was as a study abroad advisor at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. And then I moved on to University of Michigan, where I was also in international education. But as you can see, I've had a variety of institutions that I've been, had the wonderful experience of experiencing. And then after that, moved to Seattle to Shoreline Community College, which is in the greater Seattle area. And I've stayed here for 19 years, and it's amazing. I mean, I had never worked at a community college before then, and, a large four-year institution, research university, and then it's been really nice to do that, to be part of that. And international ed, it's kind of in my blood. I mean, the last year and a half, I actually got tapped to oversee all of student services at this college under our vice president. But, now that international is coming back and we really needed my focus to, come back to international, this is where I am. And so I'm very excited to be back.
In your kind of vast experience, from being an international student yourself, right? And then managing international education for as many years as you have, what do you think are some of the main changes you've seen in the industry?
So some of the main changes in the industry, well, some of the things that some things have stayed the same and other things have changed a lot. So, the US, for example, we still don't have a national, kind of policy in terms of international ed. And so it's still everyone doing their own thing. And kind of, working obviously with our state Department of State and, with the visas and all of that. But what has changed is kind of just the ability and the agility with which I have noticed, universities and colleges and how they tackle, all of the various kinds of, trends and situations that happen externally. It just feels like they've gotten much more agile. And again, this is a generalization, obviously. And then the other piece is that there's a lot more educational technology. There's more kind of even NAFSA, for example, more vendors coming. My first NAFSA was 1996. I'm probably aging myself, but I was in grad school at the time. And, so you can see how much of, kind of overlap and synergy that there's a lot of work being done, with vendors. Also the acceptance of agents. I mean, kind of, coming to NAFTA, that is something. So, that these kinds of changes, obviously. Now, I was in the international education field when, we had the Asian financial crisis that happened in, I believe it was
late 90s. Yep, late 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1997. And then after that, I mean, of course, 9/11, CVIS implementation, SARS, all of that, what have you, and then this pandemic, which was all of that on steroids, is the way I describe it. So,
Let me ask you a quick, because you touched on something on U.S. policy on international education. So Canada has been especially the last couple of years, has been really
Yes.
kind of at the forefront of just making it as open to international students as possible. Australia is now doing the same thing, kind of easing the ability to get jobs, the ability to stay in the country. What do you think? And again, nobody kind of knows the answer to this, but what's your reading the tea leaves in the next 5 to 10 years? You think the U.S. will have to relax the ability to get jobs here, the ability to kind of stay for
Yeah,
international students?
I think yes. So part of it is also the other thing that I wanted to go back to your previous also question and also related to this one is the fact that the US was kind of, didn't have as many competitors in the
Mm,
past. It was kind of
mm,
like the US is right up here and, students want to go there. That's number one. It's still, very, very attractive. And obviously the US people are very, very interested in going to the US, but the competition worldwide, all of the countries you mentioned, there is a lot more competition now. In terms of reading tea leaves, I think the US is responding already. I mean, where you see kind of Education USA and kind of, doing a lot more in terms of like for my sector, I mean, community colleges, they're really pushing those. But yes, I think if we want to stay competitive, something has got to give. I mean, at least a national policy, because sometimes what ends up happening is that the colleges are, working in one direction, trying to be, encouraging students to come here and, investing our dollars in recruiting students overseas. And yet
mm,
then when the students don't get visas, it's kind of, like we're not
right.
working in conjunction, with where with a national policy, it would be easier because then this is what the country wants. And then, we can kind of, energize that and kind of really operationalize that as colleges and universities. So that would be ideal if we kind of continue and again, with all of these other countries doing much more of that, we've got our, competition. And I
Yeah.
will still say the U.S. is, the U.S. is the U.S. in terms of its educational system. I mean, I would not change that, me having come to the U.S. for my, education at all. So
I know, but
biased.
I know, but I was looking at some. If you look at some of the research now that's coming out, Canada is now ranked as number one, most attractive market for international students, and I don't know how I feel about that. But let's talk about kind of what's attractive for international students. Let's talk a little bit about community colleges. They've become a significant player, I would say, in the international student market, right? What makes community colleges attractive?
Absolutely. So the first thing I will say is, not all community colleges host large numbers of international students. So in a way, if a community college wants to be really, having international students in a significant way on their campus, they have to make sure that they are investing and very intentionally investing in an infrastructure for this
Mm,
student population. So not all colleges will necessarily just, there's 1,500, or thereabouts community colleges in the US. And then you've got, you look at the IIE Open Doors report and you've got the top 40. So typically the ones that, so Shoreline has invested in that infrastructure, which,
mm,
kind of, because some community colleges will tend to be kind of, more where students are, part-time or they're, commuter students or what have you, where we have a residence hall on campus. So
mm.
we've kind of really gone all in and really, made sure that we are equipped to, serve international students from like 64 different countries that we have right now.
Right.
So what makes it super attractive is I have to say, I mean, community colleges are a gem and they are probably the best kept secret in
Mm,
the US educational higher ed, system. Um, Students are, paying a third of what they would pay to go to a four-year
yeah.
university a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Wow.
And then they are ending up at Shoreline because we have again invested in that infrastructure where we provide them with top-notch academic advising. They are
Mm,
ending up at top universities around the US after the
wow.
2 years, and then basically getting their bachelor's degree from that university. So we
Yeah.
regularly students transferring to, UCLA, UC Berkeley, University of Michigan, obviously University of Washington,
Yeah.
all around the country, approximately 200, universities. So there's that value add where, and the parents are saving, tens of thousands of dollars. So,
Yeah.
the proof is in the pudding,
Yeah, it was actually kind of cool to see one of your students with a flag of my alma mater, University of Illinois, so,
Nice,
on the website.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How do they hear about Shoreline?
Mhm. So, community colleges, because they're a fairly US kind of concept. Sometimes, when we go into a new market, we have to actually spend a substantial amount of time educating people and informing them. I mean, letting them know what a community college is. And sometimes, people will be like, "That sounds too good to be true." How can you like
Yeah.
you're paying 1/3 of the tuition and it's so flexible. You don't need, SAT, you don't need this, you don't need that. It's like we will just get in here and then, we have the ability to transfer to a university. So it is very flexible. It is supposed to be a very flexible model. And
Yeah.
the way that, but because, we're not, community colleges are not ranked in the typical, US News and World Report, rankings
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah.
If we want international students, we have to go out there and get them and recruit them. So
Got you.
I mentioned, the colleges that are very intentional and have, invested in that infrastructure, they will do recruitment overseas if they really are serious about it. And then, basically, you're doing fairs and you're doing, working with agents, you're doing all of that, and then word of mouth. I mean, we have literally students, I mean, parents will send their third child, the cousins, there's just a lot of word of mouth because we really, really focus on the services. So, they've seen success after success. So then that is, it builds on that momentum.
Yeah. So if you were to kind of rank, the top 3 recruiting tools, if you will, what would they be? Word of mouth?
I would
Would it be
say,
just kind of fairs or yeah?
I would see overseas face-to-face recruitment. Nothing
Mm,
can really replace that. The
got
meeting
it.
with, parents with prospective students. So yeah, fairs would be one. Agents, very much so. And word of mouth will happen, automatically. That, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like it can't be an intentional strategy per se, but we, per our philosophy, we provide excellent services. So we know then that will be, something that will come back and help us. So
How big are you, as a team in data analytics when it comes to like enrollment, enrollment funnels and kind of going through those metrics?
so we tend to look at data a lot. And again, it doesn't have to be super complicated. We have, an enrollment plan. Also, it doesn't have to be super complicated. It's not
Got it.
something that's pretty, and then, you have all of these charts, and then it just sits on a shelf. We tend
Got it.
to really use so the data we collect, we might do something one year. Pandemic, again, we are collecting it in a different way. But
Yeah.
essentially, we do analyze, we do look at, where are students coming from? How much money are we investing in different
Mm,
markets? What's the return on investment in terms of,
mm,
student populations? What's the retention rate? We do look at metrics, and what are the sources that students are coming from? And so it is important to do that just because then you can kind of, again, very,
yeah. Yeah.
look at the way that you're strategizing and really, put, your resources where you think you're going to get,
Got it.
returns.
Got it. Yeah. One of the difficult things about kind of being in the position of the leading an admissions team, and especially tackling all of these different countries, and we're so dependent on visas, right? And there are countries where you can get a visa in 15 days and then a month later it becomes 490 days, which basically means you kind of have to change your entire strategy, right? So one of the toughest things is figuring out once you pick a country, say, I don't know, Philippines, right? You've never done anything in Philippines. Is there a methodology on how you allocate a budget to this specific country? how long do you advertise before you decide, or how long do you are you in the country before you decide, okay, this is working or it's not working?
Yeah, we do have certain kind of
Like
principles or
criterias?
tactics
Yeah.
that we actually use. I will tell you, it is not a science. It's an
Mm,
art. And so yes,
mm,
we have those, and that's there is, but there are so many other kind of factors that will influence that decision.
mm,
The way we do it is, and also it depends on how risk averse, your leadership at the college is or is not.
mm,
But essentially, what we tend to do is we have three categories of markets. So we have our core markets, which are bread and butter markets that are tried and tested over time, decades. We've had partnerships in those markets. Asia is a prime example. The countries that
mm.
we traditionally recruited, core markets, and then we have what are called developing markets, and that's our terminology. I'm sure others might
Yeah,
use it or
yeah,
not.
for sure.
Those are the ones where we have, kind of put in some amount of thought and have been developing over the years. Not necessarily putting a ton of resources, but just enough that then we can see how are things going, over time, over 3 years. Are we seeing traction? Are we not? And then we have the emerging markets. And
Mm,
so those are the ones that are, brand new, kind of like and we don't put in a ton of resources in the emerging markets per se, but what we do is we say, okay, we're going to try this out for the next, again, 3 years. We will see how things go,
mm.
but we won't put in a lot. And what we also do is we do a regional strategy versus just a country by country. So,
Got it.
if we're going to be, investing, then you go to that region and then you're kind of, covering a few of those countries, because then you're basically, I mean, I'm sure other people do that as well, but
Yeah.
that's something that, so there's no necessarily, but I would say within 3 years, if we don't see some sign of kind of traction, some indications, then we might kind of just ease off a little bit, and then kind of just monitor that for a
Mm,
little bit. And now, of course, with the pandemic, we also started doing, adding the armchair recruitment piece, which again, it's not very as effective, but it allowed us, because everyone was grounded, it allowed us to really open new markets. And so, where we used to have students from only 50 plus countries, now it's 54 countries. So we
mm.
were able to actually kind of, um, get a wider number.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. You mentioned earlier agents as a tool as well. What are your thoughts on agents?
Oh,
There are some. Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, no, agents, I mean, so many cultures, they are what students and parents will use. That's the expectation, is that they are going to get help from a counselor or
Mm,
agent to be kind of working. We have relied on agents. We have to, especially colleges and universities that are, again, not the name brands.
right.
Um, they certainly play a very important role. Um, our agent partners in our core markets, as I mentioned, I mean, we've worked with them for decades, some of them.
Mm,
We are very, very careful about the quality and the
mm,
kind of agent that is really, serving students. Because at the end of the day, I think, I mean, we really protect our reputation. We care deeply
yeah.
about our reputation in that country. And so, whether it's our reputation with the US Embassy or consulate, or it's with, students and parents, we want to make sure that we are kind of doing whatever it takes to work with again partners that are kind of very focused on the student and serving the
Mm,
student and what's in the best
mm,
interest of the student. So that's something we tried really, really hard. But absolutely, agents, we use them all the time.
mm. And how do you feel about platforms, recruited platforms? Think of like masterstudies.com, portals, aggregators of applications, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, we tend to use those less than say agents. We do use some, but again, then it's kind of not as kind of just in terms of the quality of students. First of all,
Mm,
then Shoreline doesn't stand out quite as much as
that's true. That's right.
say, or any university for that matter, then it's a kind of a noisy marketplace. And again, they have their benefits, obviously, but we don't solely focus on that. That's just kind of one of the tools. We do like to kind of, really focus on kind of where it's, where we can really work more deeply with,
Mhm.
a partner, and, that the parents, and, bring in alumni, who, again, we have many, many enthusiastic alumni, luckily, because
Yeah.
they've had, wonderful experiences. So again, the kind of platforms obviously have their place, but I would say it's just one of the tools in our toolkit. So
Somebody who's starting out in admissions, what are some of the things that they should kind of pay attention to as they start learning their role?
so you mean what kind of like recruitment, admissions, all
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
Shoreline, we do everything. We do like the international education department here for us is like the whole cycle. So
Mm,
some people call it a college within the college, but when you talk about admissions, you're talking more recruitment and
correct.
all that. I would say, you know, talk to your people, and go to NAFSA, go to your any conferences you can, AIRC, just really get to know what people are doing. And people are great about, giving you tips. You go to Globetrotters page on Facebook. There's a lot of folks who can help you. It
Mm,
is important to, kind of learn as much as you can about the land. You've got to keep your ear on, to the ground, because the trends are going to be really important. Otherwise, you've got, a certain amount of funding